Coming up in just a few days, we are going to be opening up registration for the brand new ACX Master Class that Dan O'Day and I put together. And I wanted to give you an opportunity by giving you a heads up that I'm going to be doing an AMA in next week's podcast during our registration period. But I wanted to give you the opportunity to sort of cogitate on this and ask your questions now. So I'm going to share with you the sort of curriculum, the kinds of questions you can ask me, which is pretty much anything, and we'll do that in this episode of the VO Heroes podcast. So currently, Dan and I are sharing free videos with all of our viewers about the world of audiobooks, ACX, narration, how it pertains to voiceover, the gear that you need, the technique that you need to put together, the technical nature of things, how to run the business. These are all the things that we do during the course of the 4 weeks that is the ACX Master Class. And I'm always surprised at the breadth of questions that are asked by people when they get into the guts of the course. The course is very deep, very broad. We begin with simply creating the expectation about what the business is, your profile, how to write it, how to attract rights holders, the people that want to hire audiobook narrators. During the second week, we talk about fiction audio, and we talk about presentation and narration and how audiobooks are the same as and differ from other areas of voiceover. And we also just begin to touch upon the equipment for a little bit. In the third week, we actually dive into the equipment, because once that math problem is solved, you can move on to the rest of the things. And we deal with nonfiction audiobooks as well. And then we really go deep into the business side of things, and not just with ACX and Audible, but with all of the other publishers and producers and platforms that have come along in the almost 10 years or so that we've been teaching the course, and the over 10 years that ACX has been around, that you can apply all the stuff that you're learning in the ACX Masterclass to all those other platforms. So all of those things together can generate an amazing number of questions. If you have questions, you don't have to be an ACX Masterclass student to ask them of me in this podcast next week. Between now and probably the weekend, if you have questions that have either just you've been curious about, you don't really know the answer to, how do you know whether a book is worth doing? What if it never sells? What kind of mic do you use? All the typical stuff that you might be thinking, great, but also questions like, how do you differentiate between male and female characters when you're doing audiobook narration? Why would I want to do nonfiction? What does that, what kind of joy do I get from relating facts or a table of contents, that kind of thing. Think about it. Think about all the things that I just laid out. Think about if there's things that you've been curious about that have thought, come into your mind while you're driving or while you're doing other work. Jot them down, send them to me, either post them as a comment underneath this video, or send me an email at davidlawrence@gmail.com, and I'll be happy to answer them in next week's podcast. I usually do these podcasts several weeks, if not a month or so in advance. But in this particular case, I'm doing this next week's podcast based on what you give me in the next few days. So don't wait. Right now, if you've got a question that you have always wondered about when it comes to audiobooks, I want to answer it. So we'll do an AMA, an Ask Me Anything, next week. And I would love to hear what your questions might be. So if you're watching this on YouTube, you go ahead and leave a comment under the YouTube video. If you're watching it on voheroes.com, leave a comment on the page where this audio or video resides. Let me know what it is that you want to know about audiobooks, about ACX, about Audible. about the equipment, about building a business around audiobook narration? What has puzzled you? Let's answer those questions for you in an AMA next week, right here. I'm David H. Lawrence the 17th. I thank you so much for watching and for listening. If you'd like to hit the like button, if you'd like to subscribe to the channel to know when we release that episode or any future episodes or be notified of new episodes, there's a bell you can ring. I don't know, these kids with their technology. I thank you so much for watching and for listening, and I will see you in the next episode of the VO Heroes podcast.